So Joe Martin, thank you for coming onto the Abundant Culture podcast. We are really excited to have you, and everybody else we talked about
to you.
Yeah. They get really excited too. So we have to dive in first about how you got into business. What's like your backstory?
Sure. I was in college and I started working with clients doing freelance because I found out that I could build websites. And at one point I realized that a client would pay me like this much per hour, like $80 an hour, and I could pay a friend $40 an hour. And there was like this free $40 just hanging out if I did that. And I was like, oh shit, business.
Yeah.
And so started building from there, started working with more freelancers, getting people to help. And I started doing more of the project management side of it and growing the business. And then ended up growing it up to an agency of 8 people at one point.
Nice. So, I've always been curious. So was that your first entrepreneurial venture, or have you had ventures before that, or?
I'll consider that my second, because the first one before that, I had a band for about 10 years.
Really?
And as much as I didn't realize it at the time, that the idea of setting up shows, going on tour, managing merchandise, promotion and pushing new shows, connecting with other bands, like it was all aspects of networking and proposals and running merchandise. Like it was all these components of a business that I just kind of figured out for so long as more of a passion.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of by the time I was out of it, it was like, oh, I know how to do this kind of thing. So I think that was the first one. And my parents are entrepreneurs as well. They've run their own business for over 30 years. And so I imagine all the dinner talk growing up was always about a business as well. I think I just overheard throughout the years.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because
that is really
I wish
awesome.
I had that. It like seeped into your subconscious.
Yeah.
I think so. Like it just builds it and you're like, oh, people things. Yeah. All right. Those will always be there. But you can't grow a business without considering the people portion.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So would you say that when you were building those websites, obviously, entrepreneurs, we do like the money portion, obviously, but would you say that was a passion of yours that kind of turned into this business, this actual successful business? Or was it like you just always saw that, oh yeah, you make money building websites?
No, it's a dream that kept changing, of first dreaming to be a rock star, and then dreaming to have a real job, and then dreaming to be able to make money building websites, and then dreaming to build $100,000 websites. And I kind of always pushed it, but I realized at the core of it, it's always been this idea of creating. That I think from my earliest days as a musician, that was about creating. And then as I learned more about design, that was about creating. And these days it's turned more into creating great user experiences of how do we really look at the human behind what's being interacted with. We've built so much for automation. We've done so many machine things that I think it needs to come back around to being person to person. It needs to be more people connections, and those people we start to see stuff.
Yeah. So, what did you go to college for?
So first, it took me 3 years to get my 2-year degree. Thank you. That was a good accomplishment. And then went back after that and went to art school. And so I ended up working full time, going to school at night, and ended up with a degree in interactive media design from the Art Institute.
Cool. That's pretty legit. So I had 2 follow-up questions based off of what you said before. The first one is, there is a such thing as a $100,000 website?
There are. Yeah, those exist.
That's crazy. What would even go into that? I never typed in, something and then went to a website and be like, man, this looks expensive.
Right.
A lot of like back end members only areas, kind of those kind of setups. So yeah, so a little bit like the marketing website component of it, but then like a whole user interaction area. So it's that stuff that is where the money starts to pile up.
I can see that a little bit more then.
Yeah, for sure. So what kind of, I guess, tell us about the transition from having this dream of, you mentioned having a dream of having a job and then wanting to, you know, move on to something else. How did that transition happen? Because I know it's different for everybody. Some people, they're kind of like me, they're kind of like forced, like all my jobs sucked. So it was like, it was really easy to become an entrepreneur because that was the case. But some people, you know, they have really great jobs, and then there's an ulterior motive of wanting to become an entrepreneur. So what drove your transition?
Getting fired, as simple as, yeah, it's pretty much just getting fired. So got fired from my job and realized that that was my chance. I kind of had the business on the side.
Yeah.
And they knew about it. Like when I interviewed, they were told about that right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they let me go, it was kind of like okay, it's kind of a now or never. Let's give this a shot. And that was actually 10 years ago this year. So I've officially been out on my own for the last 10 years of hustling for my own paycheck almost every day.
So tell me a little bit of more about that, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, even myself, have had moments where like you love what you do so much, but sometimes it's so hard being on your own, and you want to quit, but it's like you don't even know what you would do with yourself even if you did.
Yeah.
So like, tell us, like, have you ever had moments that were like that, or has it always been this, I don't want to say smooth sailing because I know that couldn't have been the case because it never is, but tell us a little bit about, you know, some of your emotions and feelings behind being on your own, especially for like a decade almost.
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah. Majority of the weeks, it's just, I want to run away. Just get me out of here. Put me back in a regular job. Let me just have a regular, consistent paycheck again.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's just those drives of, well, I want to do things this way. This is what I want to see in the world. And these are the things that I want to contribute. And it's not always in line with someone else's vision. And I think for me and a lot of entrepreneurs, it's that same idea of creating. We go back to something that we want to put into the world. We see the world a certain way, and we see a way to make the world be that way. Yeah. And we have to do what it is when it kicks us. And you know it. You ran through the whole thing right there. You've got the full gambit. Just put that in repeat over 10 years and you're good.
Yeah. I know it can be a little tough, but I feel like just probably the same way you feel is super, super worth it at the end of the day. So would you say that freedom, would you say that's the main driver, this main motivation, or are there other motivations for you wanting to be an entrepreneur and stay an entrepreneur?
I mean, the creating aspect is definitely a big part of it, of just, I want my ideas in the world kind of thing. But that freedom, that flexibility, I think it's a false reason that a lot of people start their own business. I think it's a false reason people decide to take that leap because they want that freedom. And it shouldn't be that. And that's kind of where, when I started looking at like being a boss, working for my team, and being a leader, of what kind of leader I even wanted to be. Yeah. And a big part of that for me is I don't want to be the boss who just takes off, goes away, and burdens everyone else. Like, I'm going to do that accidentally without realizing it. To do it intentionally seems just like a shit move.
Yeah.
So when I started thinking about like, what do I want out of a boss? Like, what would make that boss like someone I'd respect and want to be with? And a lot of it was like, if I'm taking time off, I want you guys to have time off. Like, how do we manage to have this flexibility together? Because it shouldn't just be about me. And that I think a lot of people try to start new businesses when really they just need to find the right business to work with, who's going to give them that. Like Lyft drivers, Lyft and Uber drivers have more flexibility than a lot of people have in their regular jobs.
Definitely.
And all of those drivers, when you ask them, why do you drive Lyft? It's because of the flexibility, because they can work on their terms. And when they know what they need to get done, they can just go get it done. Yeah,
certainly.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip over one of the questions just for right now, because this is like the perfect time to talk about your book.
I was getting ready to do that too.
So tell us what your book is about. Tell the listeners the title. Just give us the nitty gritty.
Yeah, called 6 Week Cycles, and it kind of came from that idea of the leader that I want to be and being the same to my team. And I don't have kids right now, but in the future, I would like to have children. And when I have children, I'd like to spend my time with those children.
Yeah.
And so it was a Friday afternoon, around 3 o'clock, when one of my developers was done with his work and asked me what else he needed to do. And I did that thing that all bosses do, where it's like, oh, hold on, let me check, let me get some stuff for you.
Yeah.
And then I kind of realized, like, what the hell, what am I doing? Like, he had recently had a daughter who was maybe 4 months old. And I just felt like nothing I was going to give him at that time was more important than him spending time with his kids. And future Joe wants that as well. Like, I want that flexibility when I get to that. And so we started looking at new ways to do the work environment. How could we make it more results oriented? And then I heard about an idea from Basecamp, and Jason Fried, the CEO of Basecamp, talked about how they worked for 6 weeks and took off for 2. And I was like, well, let me see if I can do this. And so we started messing with it and finding our own way to kind of nail it down. I started taking the idea of, in marketing, we look at the customer journey. I was like, well, what about the employee journey? Like, what about what's happening to my team? And so I started looking at that and finding ways to just essentially create a customer experience, but more of an employee experience. And so wrote a book and put together exactly how we do it. I put down everything that we've seen in terms of productivity and culture from it. And then a lot of my own ideas about time and how we use time and what it means and what the important things are.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there. And the reason I say that is I know some entrepreneurs are probably listening to this. Maybe they have a staff or a team behind them, and they're like, no, like, no, like, so they come to work for 6 weeks and then they get a 2-week. No, absolutely not. And the reason I say that is because I know that you've been doing this for a minute and you've actually seen a positive impact on not only the overall mood of your company, but also the productivity. So can you talk about some of the impacts that you've seen in the different areas of your company and how that ultimately made you a better company, and try to sell it to that person who's saying no?
Sure. I think the big thing is those 2 weeks off we're running out and going on vacation and stepping away from everything and shutting down. Those 2 weeks off, we're still entering email, but the big job during those 2 weeks is to plan the next 6 weeks. And what that means is we're still having conversations. It's more casual. It's nothing as structured. We don't have like regular Monday and Friday meetings during that time. But each person's job is to know what they need to work on for those 6 weeks. And when we do that, we start to essentially create to-do lists for ourselves. We start to go through the process of visualization, and in our minds, we're actually walking through the steps we need to do, which then actually helps people achieve things faster. And with that, we have clear goals at the beginning of each week. Our meetings are set in terms of maintaining communication throughout the cycle of, and Monday, we have a check-in meeting of what's coming up. And then Friday, we talk about what went well, what didn't go well. And it's just been, even in those meetings, of more communication. Everyone knows what everyone else is working on. It's more of this just better area all around. And I feel like I'm more connected to my employees, that I know what's happening in their life. Like, I know if they didn't get something done, why they didn't get it done, instead of just this idea of, oh, you didn't finish it. It's like, great, you were up, your kid has allergies. They had to go to the doctor yesterday. That stressed you out. And then you had to go through this all night and she was screaming and crying. Yeah, no, I don't expect you to be at your best today.
Right.
Can you get it done by this day though? And they know what they need to get done and by when, and they can let life happen. Let life happen. Stop making work so regimented and insist that life happens outside of it. It all needs to work together.
I like that a lot.
And I think that's just so genius, honestly, because it's like, the way it sounds is like, it's funny because we're trained to, go to work and then have all of these tasks and rules that we have to fulfill and deadlines, and there's no fluidity. What's the word? Yeah, fluidity there. And it sounds almost as if you're just letting your employees, who are grown-ups, be actual grown-ups and hold themselves accountable. And I think that is really, really cool, especially in this day and age, like, because the 2 weeks, they almost sound as if, even though they're not physically at work, they're still being productive, but it's more self-governed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they take initiatives during those times as well. My developer would use those 2 weeks to learn new things he wanted to learn. Like my project manager would read into new certifications he wanted to get or new ways of doing things. And it was that chance to even just improve on what we had. Because yeah, I love the way you just put it. You're the first person to put it in terms of letting grown-ups be grown-ups. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's really needed because like
it builds trust.
Yeah, one, it builds trust. And I mean, that's really important in companies. But two, it's like, think about all the mental capacity that it takes in an individual's mind to have to hold your hand every step of the way. And I feel like it makes you so much more efficient that you don't have to actually do that all the time.
Yeah, that they have a list, they know what they need to get done, and they can go through it. And that it's not about time. My company doesn't get better or bigger because they showed up for 40 hours in a week.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. It works when they get done strategic components to help move the business forward. And I need to be the one to know what those components are so I can even tell them that the idea of people going through a week not knowing what they're going to work on every day and getting into work and their boss just throwing stuff at them. Oh, no.
You need a TED Talk one day because this is like, this is awesome.
Okay, wait. So I have a question. Does the 6-week cycles, does that work like across all industries, you'd say, or is it better for like specific types of companies?
No clue. I have no clue. I only know what we've done with it and kind of what I've seen. Some other ideas I've heard are companies who were thinking of using it more in like rotating. And so you're not necessarily giving everyone those 2 weeks, but at least one person at a time is kind of getting that breather as they go through. And then it's not as much about like, don't follow 6 and 2. More so I just want companies to have a conversation about employee happiness. Okay. I don't know what the magical formula is for every company. I think that every company has kind of a different rhythm to how they work and how they need to get work done. But are you giving people a break? Are you giving them some breathing room? Can you let them go shopping on a Tuesday afternoon? There's no one at the stores. It's so much nicer than going in there again every time. But we force the entire world to go to the stores at the same damn time. Give them a day off.
On Saturdays and Sundays.
And then you can't park. And then you can't find the parking spot.
And then you're waiting in line longer. Like you push it off, but then you're spending more time in your off time doing stuff that would take less time throughout the right. Yep. Yeah. Things
really
need to change. Things need to change.
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask though, because I'm kind of going through a journey of becoming more creative myself, just because we have to do it for branding and marketing and stuff like that. Were you always like creative, or is that something that you learned when you went to school?
I think it started with music, and I didn't know it. I was just a chubby little 8th grader who thought if I played guitar, I'd get girls. Like it's what every kid, probably everyone, every boy who's ever played guitar, that's probably where it all started. We'll throw that out there. Rolling Stones everywhere. But I think that was kind of like my first outlet for it.
Yeah.
I think it has been kind of an innate creativity throughout my life. I just didn't know where to put it. And I think music was kind of that first channel, and then getting more into design after that. And now just the idea of crafting experiences and what does that look like when you can actually make someone's life a little bit better. So I think it's grown up throughout the years.
Yeah, for sure.
So since you've been talking a lot about creativity, we see that you put the creativity in the websites that you do. Like, for example, everybody visit hijoemartin.com because that website is awesome. I was jealous and I looked at my website right after and I was like, yes, I have to change that. But since you do all of that, I saw on your website that it says that you do CRO. So can you explain like what CRO is?
Sure. Stands for conversion rate optimization. And essentially, if 1 out of every 100 people who visit your site fill out a form or buy something, how do we make it 2? How do we get 2 out of 100? And so it's really about these incremental changes of looking at where is someone getting held up in the process? What information are they actually getting as they arrive at your page? One of my biggest pet peeves are rhetorical questions on websites when they just have a nice big heading somewhere and it says, why choose us? Your whole web page should be telling me why I should choose you, not just this area. What do you? And so it's more about finding that story, talking to it more like a person. And so a lot of my process, I actually make my clients go through and we identify just one person. Just let's get it down to one person whose life you can make amazing with your service or product. And then let's build it for them. And then we can worry about building it for everyone else.
And you call that user persona, right?
Yeah. User personas, target customer profile. Just the idea of let's really narrow it down. I don't want to hear that your target customer is 35 to 55 years old. A 35-year-old is vastly different from a 50. A 35-year-old is different from a 37-year-old. Like, I need to look at exactly just who is that person, what drives them, and why is your product any good? And if I find out their product's not good, send them out. Send them out.
Yeah. So, I remember that brought up a good point. I remember you talked about something that you changed for a client. It was a button.
Yeah.
You changed one button. And I just want I remember the story, but I need my audience to hear that because it was like totally
that
awesome.
Was crazy.
Like, why couldn't that be my button? Like, but yeah, tell our audience about that so they can truly understand the power of what you do.
Yeah, I work with a lot of tours around the world. And so I'll leave the riddle with everyone kind of listening and we'll let them figure out what it should be. But the idea is a button that says buy tickets. It's just really heavy. It's a big thing to ask, to say, Joe, buy. To say, Jasmine, book now, a little nicer, little easier.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I made it even nicer than book now. And just by changing those 2 words, we saw a 20% increase in revenue. And we'll let the listeners figure out what those 2 words could have been.
That's crazy.
So it's nicer than book now, everybody. Just think about it. Pause this podcast if you have to figure out those words.
I honestly forgot what it was too. I'm trying to think what was it? It was nicer than book now, but yeah, like that is absolutely amazing. And especially for maybe, the mom and pop donut shop down the street, a lot of companies, they have an online presence and they just aren't necessarily doing things as efficiently as they could be. They're not speaking to the person as a person, or they're speaking to a group of people and nobody understands who they're actually talking to or talking about. So I feel like what you do is extremely, extremely important and much needed in the market today.
Yeah.
I do feel like that idea of helping the mom and pops kind of survive, that we're not in a world where websites cost $25,000 to build anymore. Use Squarespace, find a template. You probably don't even need WordPress, honestly. Like there's so much out there to just simplify this, and that my hope is that it starts to go more towards the strategy. So it is more about this idea of looking at the customer journey. What did they click on before they got to your site? When they get to your site, what are you really saying? Read it out loud. Pretend your site is a salesperson. And if that salesperson just pops up and says, why choose us? Maybe you walk away from that creepy salesperson.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I think I would. I would. So.
I thought you wanted to ask the next question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So You also have a meetup that is just, it's awesome. And that's like, actually, I think that's like the first time we met you, or we didn't even meet you there because there was so many people there. So we had to follow up later. So what is it that makes your meetups like so successful? What do you do?
What's the secret sauce?
I'm gonna throw it down to marketing. It's the same concept of just looking at that customer experience of just what does it look like? How do we actually make something that people want to go to? Because I've been to networking events I didn't want to go to. I've been to ones that I really didn't want to go to. So what would be the ones that I would really want to go to? And I think that that's what drives a lot of conversations between me and the team behind it, of how do we craft this into something that we'd want to attend? How do we make sure people get value out of it? And at the end of the day, it's the same concept behind a website of what kind of value are we providing? We can take those and put them in the real world and say, now how about here? If someone takes their time to come out here, how do we make sure we actually use their time well?
So tell me a little bit about the process of creating a user persona, because it seems like you do that a lot. And I feel like it's something that's really underutilized because it's something that I've just started learning. I just started scratching the surface of it as of recently. And it's weird because it's so important, and it's simple, but as a business owner, it's like you got to kind of train yourself to think that way because you want to sell to everybody, but that's not the most efficient way to, get your product out there. So walk us through what are some of the things that go through your mind when you create a user persona?
Always chasing it back to revenue, essentially. And so which kind of customer segment or which customer do you really get the most value out of? Which one gets the most value out of you? Which one has the highest profit margin? And then putting in some big weight to the question of, well, who do you even want to work with? Who excites you? What kind of companies do you want to be a part of? And we let that kind of drive this initial idea. And the first time we go through it, a lot of it's guessing of just, I want you to guess where they live. I want you to guess where they went to college. And what we're trying to do is really get this full image in your mind of exactly who this person is. How many kids do they have? Are they divorced? Is this their first marriage, their second marriage? Are they the middle child and they suffer from middle child syndrome? Like, let's find these things out. And then we can get into the idea of like, what are their fears? So when they come to your site, what are they afraid of? If they're going to buy from you, what are some of the things that are really kind of making them say, I don't know? And then let's address those head on. Let's talk about those things. What's motivating them? What's bringing them there in the first place? What's happening in their life right now? And to start to get this image of, well, you guys told me about someone. You told me to go check out hydromartin.com. Okay, interesting. I heard him on this podcast. Now I'll go sit down and look at the site. And then what does that site need to say when they get there? What am I trying to get them to do? Which I'm trying to get them to sign up on my mailing list. You'll see it right away. There's a little button that says join my mailing list. Right away, I'll let you know this is what I want out of you. So that idea of just looking through that and really understanding just who is this customer? And once you guess, then we want to prove. Then we go back, let's ask some questions. Let's actually talk to people. Let's run a survey. Let's find out what they say. When I worked for a ticketing company up in Canada, the company did all this cool stuff. So it was a reservation system that sold tickets for tours. And they have this cool vendor notification system that emails all the restaurants that you work with, all these automated emails that send for you, all these reports that you can run, all this cool stuff. And we sent out a survey to the entire customer base and asked them to tell us, what's the most important thing about us? What feature do you love the most that we have? The almost unanimous response was secure credit card processing. That we were like, that's so we would never say that. That's so simple. Yeah, of course we process credit cards. Yeah, obviously. We also do all this other cool stuff. But until you talk to that customer, until you really know what they want, until you know how they see you, then we know what we can do. Then we know how to innovate. We know how to talk to them. We know how to treat them when they come through the door. And I think those are the most important parts of really narrowing down that persona and going through and just, who are you? Tell me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like creating an imaginary friend, like down to like, you know what their favorite color is.
Yep. Yeah, we did one. I work with a company in Chicago called the Magic Penthouse, who
Mhm.
does cool magic shows once a month. And one of the things we determined in the persona was how much they love pets,
Mhm.
and that they're really involved with pets. They have dogs, they have cats. And so on his site, he wanted to push kind of a monthly promo about booking your holiday party. And so he specifically chose a picture of a couple of puppies wearing little Santa hats to say, book your holiday party. And
That's
so
cute.
finding those small little things of just what's going to help someone trust you, what's going to help you connect more with that person.
That's amazing.
That is.
Yeah. So another question we have is you've started companies, you sold companies, you've done all of these great things. I think in particular you sold the last company before this one, you sold that one, right?
Yeah. So I sold my agency clients over to another company.
Okay.
And then we took a gamble on building a product, and then we had that product acquired.
Okay.
Nice.
So one of the questions I have is, what are some of the business principles that you use that helped you, I guess, create that company to be so, I guess, lucrative to somebody else that they will want to buy it? And also, what are some of the just business principles that help you be successful today?
Okay. Business principles that help me be successful. I'm actually going to take it all back to the user persona. It's really just, who are we doing this for? Who's the human on the other side of this? How do we make their experience great with it? And I think that's the core. And
Yeah.
for building the business, having it acquired, on that front, it was the idea of just finding a hole, seeing something that I felt like could help. And so we had actually approached the ticketing company when we sold it.
Nice.
And we had built a prepackaged website specifically for tours that told them what to write in every area of the site. It limited how much they could write so they couldn't oversell themselves. And we gave them the tools that we felt they needed, and not too much where they could kind of MySpace it. We Facebooked the website instead of MySpace.
That's awesome.
And so
And it's funny that you say overselling too, because I have a tendency to almost do that, and she stops me most of the time before it gets too out of hand. But it's like when you're excited about something and you know it's like the best thing since sliced bread, you could go on and on about it, like for fun almost. And like sometimes your customer is like, well, you could have took my money like 20 minutes ago. I'm not so sure.
Get to the point, Joe. Get to the point. What do you want me to know?
But I think that's really important as well. Like, not overselling, and even limiting how much text that you put into your website. Because even I noticed myself when I talked to you the first time, I went back to my website and I'm like, it's like I'm explaining it, but like, can it be a video? Can it be more interactive? Can they see me? Can I use gestures instead of just having these, black words on this white, background? I think that really helps a lot, because we live in this world that's like social media driven, and a lot of it is pictures and videos. And I find myself like, if somebody types out this huge paragraph, especially if it's not spaced out, I'll read like the first one and I'll be like, you know what? Never mind. I'll just watch the video.
Welcome to the whole world right now.
Yeah. So I think what your message to people, to me, it sounds like, act like your customer. I mean, at some point in time, you're a customer somewhere else, and I've noticed this in myself. Like, I'm a customer to the store down the street. I'm a customer every time I walk into my barber shop. And it's like, all I have to do is tailor my thinking towards how do I act when I go to buy something, go to those places. And that's how I should speak to my customer. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, sometimes we just switch. Like, we're a customer and then we go totally over here to be a business owner. And when it's like, no, dude, just be like your customer, because that's who's buying from you.
Oh, and it happens so much. And then for some reason, people feel the need to write quirky, salesy kind of language. Like, don't do that. Just tell me, what is this? That we know that every person coming to that site has the same question when they arrive at your site. And it's simply, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
That's all they want to know. That's all we need to tell them. They don't give a shit about your background and how long you've been around, probably. They just want to know, what do I get out of it? And specifically, what do I get? Tell me. Don't give me 3 paragraphs that I'm going to skip right over, like you just said, because what everyone does. Just
but it's true.
sum it up.
Yeah, it's true though.
That's where we kind of force people to do that by doing it that way and making them write. We'd put a character limit of saying, look, you've got the size of a tweet to explain why someone wants to take this tour. And they would do it. And we started seeing, after the first year, there was an average increase of 42% in revenue for companies who had switched to using our website solution from their own.
Man, I hope you charged them a lot.
We kept it reasonable. We actually kept it. We made it a pay per month package.
Oh, okay.
We made the website a SaaS, and then when the company in Canada, when we paired up with them, one of our big reasons for pairing up with them was because we were actually able to put the website into a percentage of ticket sales. So now we were actually able to go to those smaller mom and pops who couldn't afford a $25,000 website and just give it to them, and then just take a percentage of the tickets. So as they sold more, we made more. And I loved that business model of knowing that we gave the smaller guys a chance against the big boys, and that they didn't look inferior because of their website. That was a huge motivating factor for me.
That's excellent, man.
Yeah, I really like that idea a lot.
But we don't want to hold you too much longer, just because we want to respect your time. We want to respect the time of our audience as well. Did you have any more questions besides that one?
No.
Okay.
I would have said it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying my questions. You go ahead.
Oh, okay, I didn't know. But we're so unprofessional. Like, we used to try to be super professional during these things, and it just sucked.
Those like the people who try to write too marketing on their websites. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, just screw it.
They're gonna be hearing us laugh a lot and stutter over words.
Yeah. Because that's our topic.
Yeah.
So you're on the Abundant Culture podcast, and we're all about, spreading abundance through knowledge, network, resources, all of those different things. And we know everybody does it in a different way. They have a different, format. They may have a different style of spreading abundance, their form of abundance throughout the world. So our question to you is, how do you personally spread abundance throughout the people in your life?
So I had a big talk with my old roommate a couple of years ago, and it was before 2017 was rolling around. I get real big with New Year's. I'm real sentimental about starting a new year and kind of what that means. And that December 31st, I talked to him and I was like, how do we change the world next year? What do we have to do? And his response, very heartfelt and very genuine from him at the time, was, that's a stupid question. We're not going to change the world. And I was like, come on, Sean. Like, come on, dream with me. Dream with me a little bit here.
Right.
And the next day, I kind of woke up and I had this feeling that I think for me, a big part of what I want to leave on the world is inspiring others to take action in their own life. And that if there's a way that I can do that, if it's my story, if it's writing a book, if it's trying to get people just one more day off a month, one day to relax, or to go steal their kid out of school for the day and take him to a museum. Like, if I can help that happen, I think I'll have done my part for the future Joe.
That's excellent, man.
I like that a lot.
Because it's important. And I like how, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a leader in your company, you understand that your employees, the people that you lead, they have lives. And I feel like, if I was working, I would want somebody who actually cares about the fact that my son has allergies. I would want to work for somebody who actually cares about my daughter having ballet practice or whatever it might be, because at the end of the day, you know, we're all human, and, you know, it's up to us to help each other get to whatever that dream is, whether, like you said, it's just one day a month. And that's such a human thing. And I feel like if we could remember to bring that to every single company, like the world would just be a lot better place.
Yeah.
I really do.
I agree.
I really hope a lot of people get your book because they need to hear it.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, guys.
So how do people get in contact with you if they want, you know, a website to make so much more money than they're already making now, or if they want to get the book, or, you know, just to talk to you? How do they contact you?
They can visit hijomartin.com. I've got information on there. They can also email me at hijomartin.com, which is just literally me@hijomartin.com. I probably should have set up Joe with Joe Martin, but it feels weird talking about yourself in the third person. Just email me at hijomartin.
That is kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
And then also, the book is not out yet, right? It's just pre-sales right now?
Correct. Yeah, it'll be out at the end of June and up on Amazon.
Okay, so get it on Amazon, people.
Can't wait to get it. I'm gonna get it.
So thank you so much, so much, because this podcast was awesome.
I had an amazing time. I like that you guys are real. Thanks for not trying to be weird with this. I just wanted to hang out with you guys in chats. This worked out really well. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We're glad you appreciate it.